Back here on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast for the final time in today's show. We're going to go over JJ McCarthy's Pro Day and one of the biggest risers in this year's NFL Draft, one of the biggest stories, potentially the biggest story, depending on how you view all of these moves panning out with the Vikings, with the Chargers, the Arizona Cardinals being a spot to trade into. JJ McCarthy could arguably be the biggest catalyst of how all this draft pans out. A lot of attention is put on the big three, the top three picks in the draft: Caleb, Jalen, potentially Drake May. That has really seen or driven this whole narrative around the draft. But if you really look at it, JJ could really be that spark that changes and flips this draft on its head, forces a team to trade up really high, give up a lot of stuff, and really go all in on JJ McCarthy. And that's just all based on the sort of season that he had and the combine workout that he had. Already impressed people, like I mentioned at the combine. The season goes without saying. He had a great end of his spell there in Michigan, winning the national championship, was on the best team by far in all of college football. So already he's coming from a winning program. He knows what it goes into winning and what that whole sort of process is like. People just really had questions about his production, his numbers, the sort of athletic traits you see with some of these other guys like Jaden Daniels running all over the field, his running ability, as well as passing. Same with Caleb, his running ability, his ability to extend plays and throw the ball a million miles down the field accurately. That draws people in a lot. So JJ was really the only one that kind of took a step back, but was the only one really under question with some of the numbers that he put up. Just last season, he had 2,900 yards, 199 average per yards per game, and had 713 attempts in his 3 seasons there at Michigan, which was the lowest among the top 4 prospects in this year's draft. So, those numbers are lower than a lot of people, but the caveat there is, the winning. He was part of winning, being successful in college football, winning the championship and all of that. So that was the biggest thing. And with his pro day now last Friday, a lot of people went there to see some of his throws, some of his timing, ball placement, and all that sort of stuff. And I think a lot of things, just from what I saw on social media, I'm sure everyone's seen it by now, the throws that he makes, the one where he rolls out left, turns around like 360 and just chucks it down to the back left side of the end zone to Blake Corum. That one drew all the attention. A lot of throws were great and just on the money, just from what I saw. He threw a lot of the deep ball as well to show all the naysayers that, the deep ball wasn't there. His arm strength wasn't to the level of a Caleb Williams. All of that he put on display on Friday, and ESPN's Matt Miller was one of the people that commented, kind of summed up his pro day when he said, McCarthy's throwing session lasted nearly 25 minutes and was clean with just 2 clear misses while showcasing sip, touch, while hitting a lot of deep routes with easy power and velocity. Like I mentioned, you could see all of those throws on social media. They were posted all over the place, hyping JJ McCarthy up even more. And I think his rise and seeing this sort of develop now with general manager scouts, I think them realizing now that he is, in my opinion, I think he's top 3. I would take him over Drake May, in all honesty, just because I think you can compare the talent with Drake May, but the winning is the biggest thing for me. Coming from a established great program in Michigan, success with Jim Harbaugh, that NFL-like environment that Harbaugh provides, clearly now that he's also in the NFL, I think you can't really measure that and his sort of character, attitude, and mental side of it. I think, Drake May can't do anything about it because he was in North Carolina. If he were to change it, obviously he would be in a better situation if he were to determine that. But because of that, not being able to determine where you go or how it all pans out with your team, I think JJ was fortunate to be in such a great situation with Michigan, and that panned out the best for him, obviously, with the success that they had. I think really that's the deciding factor for me. He's coming from a established and very stable organization with Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, which just really tips the scale for me in deciding between him and May. When it comes to Jaden Daniels and Caleb, I just think they have that talent-wise thing that you really just can't teach or can't develop in some quarterbacks. I think the gap is still close. I'm not saying Caleb and Jaden are up here and JJ's way down here. I think it's more sort of like here-ish, just because JJ, I think, has impressed people and has shown people his arm strength and arm talent is better than what they anticipated. But with Caleb and Jaden, I just think they provide a bit more of that special trait. I could be completely wrong, and some teams like the Commanders or the Bears draft JJ ahead of Caleb and Jaden. You don't really know, but that's how I would evaluate them. And he answered some of the biggest questions, like I mentioned. And when they asked him about it afterwards, what sort of things he wanted to disprove out here or prove to these NFL teams was, he said, I just wanted to showcase the questions they had about outbreakers to the left and putting some air on the deep routes, stuff like that. I felt like I did that today. I'm pretty confident with the showing I put out there, and so on and so forth. He went on to talk about that even more. And like I mentioned, I liked what I saw out of his pro day. When I was talking about the combine just, again, a few weeks ago, I mentioned how JJ, by throwing at the combine, I think really helped him to start those tricklings, those whispers between scouts, like, oh, like this kid's like pretty good. This kid's actually better than we thought. Jaden and Caleb had the pleasure of being talented and not really having to do that with questions around Drake May, I think, and JJ. By Drake May not throwing at the combine, and JJ throwing at it, I think he kind of elevated above Drake May in that aspect, for me at least. And now, having this pro day, showing out even more with some crazy throws that impressed scouts and wowed everybody on social media with that, brought more eyes to JJ, I think only increased his chances of going up more on boards. And the other side of it, the personality, the character-wise thing, like I mentioned, I think that was his biggest trait. I think that's the biggest thing that people are left really impressed the most with. Yeah, the arm talent and the on-the-field display pleasantly surprised them, but with his character, I think that's the thing that they were most assured of, the thing that they really don't have to worry about with him. So he already gained a gold star in that category. Now they are pleasantly surprised in all these other aspects. It has risen him up to top 3, top 4 level of a talent. And it all really just depends on fit and how these teams evaluate them. Obviously, the biggest thing about this whole draft is the Vikings and how they could shake this whole thing up if they trade up and try to get JJ. Because I think he's still seen as the one still looking out. Not in my opinion, but that's just how I think the media paints it right now. Trading to that 4 spot, I think people would still believe that JJ will be in it around there. But if I were the Vikings and I saw this pro day, how impressive it was and how good of a feeling he left for all these teams, I would really be going after the Patriots and trying to trade for that 3rd pick, because you don't know what the Patriots would really do. Again, no surprise, I would trade back if I was the Patriots, but if they were to go with a quarterback, they could very well take JJ, and maybe the Vikings don't want Drake May. A lot of teams feel like the Vikings are in on J.J. McCarthy and wanting him to be their franchise guy. He's already had meetings with the Giants and the Commanders prior to his pro day. Now this week he has a private workout with the Minnesota Vikings, so that already is showing me some interest, legitimate interest from the Vikings. So that's one thing. Today at the NFL honors meeting, Jim Harbaugh reiterated his sentiment, saying that he is the best quarterback in this draft and the best quarterback that he's seen, at least at the college level. he said it's something about his mental and how he gets on the field. He just turns into a killer, is how he put it. So that, on top of everything else, I think JJ's really done no bad, no harm at all in this offseason. It's worked out the best for him. And the biggest topic to me is if McCarthy goes, if McCarthy makes it to 3-4, like I mentioned before with the Patriots, what is he going to take for maybe the Giants or the Vikings, like I mentioned, to move up right away? I think this is probably a trade that we're going to have to wait and see on the draft day and how it all pans out. But that sort of factor of having the confidence to wait, not jump the gun and overpay right now for a draft pick, having the confidence to sit and wait to see how it all plays out is risky because your guy could be gone. But if he gets to number 3, I think it could really get exciting in this draft because if JJ's still there at 3 with Drake May, you're going to see a lot of people, or it will be reported after with the Patriots, that a lot of teams, a lot of people are calling them to trade whatever is necessary for that pick. And if I'm the Patriots, I say that I'm open to trading that 3rd pick, but I'm not really considering anything until draft day. If they decide that's the way they want to go and accumulate draft capital, I'm not saying anything until draft day. Then I'm picking up the phone and seeing what teams are willing to give up to get the best out of my situation. Because like I mentioned before, the Patriots need more than one quarterback to change this thing around. Waiting to see how desperate teams get, I think, is the best scenario. The most entertaining scenario, definitely, for all of us watching at home. It always leads to the most surprises. And just to wrap this whole thing up, I think one of the biggest pro days undoubtedly this offseason was this Michigan one, and seeing how JJ participated, because Michigan, coming off of a national championship, had a lot of great players, a lot of talent that people went to see. I think it says a lot about how good JJ really is. If he was the one that made all the headlines, if he was the one that drew the most eyes, was the one most talked about at the end of the day, because they had players like Roman Wilson, Chris Jenkins on the defensive line, a bunch of offensive and defensive linemen that are very great. I think it says a lot. If you didn't get a chance to watch the pro day or see some of the throws, just seeing that JJ was the one that was the real superstar out of all of these talented players, I think it tells you all you need to know if you need a quarterback in this draft. There's no category or box that JJ really hasn't checked at all throughout this offseason. Like I mentioned before, he's been great in the interviews. Probably that's what's been the most talked about thing for these teams. They just needed to see the on-the-field product, and I think he blew them out of the water. And again, I'll say if I'm drafting, I am taking JJ. I'm making sure JJ is the 3rd one taking off of this board. If I'm the Vikings, the Giants, the Raiders, the Broncos are in there as well. If JJ makes it past 2, I'm taking him without a doubt. That's just me and how I feel about it. Again, I would love to know how you guys feel about it, what you guys think. If you leave it in the comments below, I would love to see what you guys think in the comment section as well. But in saying that, I'm excited to see how JJ develops and how this whole thing develops with the draft and trades and stuff like that. It's only going to get crazier, which is the good thing for us and for me, getting to talk about it more and more. But in saying that, that is where I'll leave that topic. And unfortunately, I have run out of time in today's episode. And now, as always, I want to remind you guys to please like, follow, and subscribe to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Make sure to also follow the network on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok for more of the network's content just outside of sports as well. There's a lot of good stuff out there around the network. If you want to see more of me and this show, check out the GSMC Sports Network channel and the GSMC Podcast Network channel on YouTube for more of the live shows that are all on there that I recorded before, as well as YouTube Shorts that are posted every weekday as well, and individual segment videos if you missed a segment or want to go back and watch one of the segments that you really liked. It's all on there on both of the channels as well. Make sure to tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more football conversations and stories around the NFL with me, Manny Moradiaga, as your host. Thanking you guys again, as always, greatly for tuning into this episode. I will see you guys all tomorrow. Take care, guys.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to